Good afternoon and welcome to the Metropolitan Council Transportation Committee meeting for May 12th, 2025. You'll note on the agenda our Dakota Land, Water, and People Acknowledgement. These commitments support the Dakota Ayote, the 11 federally recognized tribes in Minnesota, Ho-Chunk Nation, and the American Indian communities representing over 150 diverse tribal nations that call the 7-county metro region home. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. If there's no changes or additions, we can proceed. All right, seeing none, the agenda is adopted. Next, we're moving to approval of the April 14th, 2025 meeting minutes. Did anyone have changes or additions? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Vento. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Osman. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. And the minutes are adopted. Now I'm going to turn it over to Metro Transit General Manager Kinderis for employee recognition.
All right. Thank you, Chair Barber, council members. Today, we are pleased to recognize 6 employees who have shown great leadership in their respective areas. In their own ways, each of these employees has played a part in advancing our mission at Metro Transit to connect people, strengthen communities, and improve lives. They have done this by serving key roles in the construction of the Metro Gold Line, a huge undertaking that by all accounts couldn't have gone better. They have done this by listening to and learning from our riders, staff, and partners while developing our Network Now service improvement framework, a framework that you'll see later in this meeting is already one we are actively advancing. And they have done this by stepping up amid a challenging operating environment and helping not just a coworker, but all the riders who are relying on this person at that moment. With the chair's permission, I'd like to hand it over to the first of our 3 presenters this evening, Steve Barrett.
Thank you. Committee member Steve Barrett. I'm the Gold Line Project Director and Construction Manager. And I'd like to present 2 employees who really were huge parts of the success on the Gold Line construction. Dennis Wolf. Dennis oversaw the civil construction portion of the Gold Line. His knowledge, technical experience, and creativity were crucial for keeping earthwork, underground utilities, guideway paving, and other civil work on schedule and, more importantly, quality built. Dennis was particularly instrumental in finding solutions to everyday problems and difficult construction items that came up almost daily and at times during the busy periods more than once per day. He was very good at building consensus among designers, other agencies, and contractors when time and money were at risk. This work was crucial to maintaining the project finish date from day one. And then second, Renee DeFore. Renee was the council authorized rep for the stations and systems portion of the work. And Renee did a tremendous job managing that work. She was extremely worked well with our contractors. She's very good at pressing them when necessary and keeping schedule and issues moving, which is so crucial to staying on track. She maintained excellent relationships with our internal stakeholders and works very hard to ensure that the Gold Line meets the needs of Metro Transit operations as much as possible. She really has a special talent for working with our own people and then also the contractors that we do business with. She did an amazing job managing the systems integration and shepherding the project after the substantial completion, but before opening day, all the testing and requirements to get through the FTA requirements and the safety certifications and all that work. Renee did an outstanding job with that.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you so much for your hard work. I mean, we talk a lot and a lot of excitement about this project on the east side, but also coming in on schedule, under budget, these things, and really have people like you guys to thank. So thank you very much. All right.
All right, Chair Barber. The next presenter is Adam Harrington, who will recognize staff who supported Network Now.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. I'm very happy to present Cindy Harper, Mark Christensen, and Julie Martinez, who have been instrumental in our work over the past several years in developing Network Now for its final culmination into our approval, your endorsement last month. They've worked very hard to build great partnerships with our communities around the region and business partners, and it shows up in the support that we see from each one of our communities and activist groups and our customers. They spend a lot of time working with our customers, developing plans, and being innovative throughout our planning process. Their solution-oriented work cultivated good external partnerships across the region, illustrated by the support we hear from communities and customers. The work is truly connecting people, strengthening communities, and improving lives, as is our vision at Metro Transit. They're invaluable members of the Metro Transit team, as their ongoing work will help shape the future of our transit system, and very proud to have worked with them and continue to implement that service over the course of the next several years. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I will tell you, we get a lot of feedback in these roles up here, and I've gotten a lot of very, very positive feedback from the public on the work you guys have done with Network Now. So thank you.
And Chair Barber, we have one final presenter, Jake Rooney, who's here to recognize Chris Becker.
All right, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm here today to recognize Rail Transit Supervisor Chris Becker for his situational awareness and seemingly simple yet selfless action he took to assist a peer during a highly stressful event. Chris has been with Metro Transit since 2014. He spent time as a bus operator, train operator, and in October of 2021, he was promoted to Rail Transit Supervisor. On February 1st of this year, we experienced a major service disruption in the downtown Minneapolis area. The Green Line was significantly impacted by the disruption, with operators off their schedules, compounded with delays associated with rail breaks, disrupted passengers, and medical emergencies. The situation became overwhelming for a recently qualified supervisor to handle. Mr. Becker, who was at the time was working the Blue Line support desk in the Rail Control Center, recognized the frustration that had befallen the supervisor working the Green Line desk and stepped in to relieve him for a short break. Chris was able to work through the challenges, develop a recovery plan for the Green Line, and coach his less experienced teammate in a quick and professional manner. Not only am I wanting to bring to light the skills and situational awareness of Mr. Becker, but his willingness to inject himself into a less than desirable, stressful situation to help a fellow supervisor. Chris's high integrity was fully displayed on this day. He showed compassion, selflessness, and an undeniable work ethic by inserting himself into a stressful situation to allow his teammate the opportunity to step away and regroup for a few minutes. Thank you, Chris. Keep up the great work. Thank you.
Thank you so much for helping out someone. I mean, that's a big deal to step in and help out when someone needs it. Well, I've got some great plaques for all y'all if you want to meet me over here, and I can hand them out.
Madam Chair, may I say something while you're getting set up here?
Please.
I'd like to congratulate all of you, but I want to do a special shout out to the Gold Line folks. Your service to my district, Councilmember Cedarburg's district, and Councilmember Lee's district is just greatly appreciated by the three of us, but also the communities and their residents on this east side portion of the metro area. The grand opening was fabulous, but the stories we're hearing from riders has been pretty great, and it's just a wonderful advancement, so thank you very much.
Thank you. I really thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you so much. You want pictures separately or all together? Maybe all together. Okay. Thank you. All right. All the Gold Line crew from here will take our picture. All right, thank you. Thank you so much.
JD.
Thank you, guys.
Lovely. Thank you.
Brian's ready.
I'm ready. 1, 2, 3, got it. All right.
Still my favorite part of this job. All right, now we do have someone from the public who wishes to address the committee, so we've got Mark Hughes here.
Thank you, committee members, for taking the time to let me have this couple of minutes. I was really awoken this past Saturday when I took a call from home, and I'm not the only one. That's part of the business you do. And concerned employee called me and said, we can't get one of our employees to work. And I said, why is that? Because Metro Mobility doesn't go to Hugo. I said, yeah, I know they don't. And the Metro Mobility cab program, they said they were going to be ending it. So we can't get him to work. And I said, is this person going to lose his job? Well, they weren't sure yet. And being as supportive of employment as our company has tried to be, and I've tried to be, to stay gainfully employed all these years, that's kind of troubling. So now what we have here is we have shortened curfews. We have 2 to 4 curfews in the afternoon, and we have people that can't get to work. I've been given no written communication thereof that the taxi cab program is ending. I've been given no verbal communication of that. The legislature likes it, and so do I. That's how I got here today, because there's a 2 to 4 curfew in Woodbury, and Metro Mobility's not running. And so I'm asking for some more answers here. Now we have somebody that can't get to work, and that kind of bothers me. And so I'll be here for a little while today, but I can always be gotten hold of. And I wish you'd consider the CAP program further. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And then now we can move on to reports. Our first is MTS Services Director Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, council members. I have a brief report for you on the Association for Commuter Transportation Midwest Chapter inaugural summit that was held here in the Twin Cities on April 16th. We had 70 folks get together from all areas of Minnesota, as well as Wisconsin and Ohio, for an event that the University of Minnesota hosted. So the Association for Commuter Transportation is made up of over 1,600 individual members from close to 500 organizations that work in travel demand management. Members primarily include the government, higher education, employer, and nonprofit sectors. So the summit started with a welcome from MnDOT, a panel that included the council's program manager for travel demand management, as well as MnDOT, Minneapolis, Metro Transit commuter programs, and others. So sessions in the summit discussed travel demand management, discussed funding, discussed convenings of groups, really focused both on the topic generally, but also specific conversations around organizations. And beyond the formal programming of the conference, of course, there are many learning and network opportunities, including afternoon tours around the U of M. So walking tours around the U of M's award-winning multimodal campus, transit tours that use the council's Metro Transit Green Line from campus to Minneapolis and walking around in downtown, and then also a bike and scooter tour that rolled through campus, as well as on adjacent shared lanes and separated path infrastructure. So a good spot to showcase our region, and notable in that it was the inaugural summit for this group. With that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, very cool. Questions or comments? All right, seeing none, we'll turn to Metro Transit General Manager Canderas.
Chair Barber, committee members, I have one brief update today, which is just to give you a heads up about our latest marketing campaign. Starting today, May 12th, we're launching Ready to Go, a marketing campaign to re-engage current riders and attract new ones by promoting services like BRT and Metro Micro. Overall, we're looking to refresh our brand, highlight recent investments, and reinforce our role as a reliable, welcoming, and convenient transportation option. Some of the key messages are go further, go faster, go easier, go stress-free. This aligns with our Bus Rapid Transit Awareness campaign, Less Stop, More Go, that you saw roll out in the lead up to the Gold Line launch. And next year's launch of a new fare payment system, Go to Pay and Go to Pay fare payment card. So again, just launching it today. I hope you see it out there, and happy to take any questions on this or other topics. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. Questions, comments? All right, seeing none, very good. All right, we don't have a tab or a TAC report this evening, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. There's 5 items on consent. I'd entertain a motion to approve the items on consent.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilmember Carter, seconded by Councilmember Chambliss. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. And we are moving, we have an information item ahead of our non-consent agenda, and it's the update on the new West 7th concept. And we have Katie Roth and Russ Stark here.
Good afternoon, Chair and Council members. Katie Roth, Metro Transit. With me today is Russ Stark, who serves as the Chief Resilience Officer for the City of St. Paul. Thank you for including this item toward the front of the agenda so our guest is able to depart. We are also joined by our other team members from MnDOT in the audience today. And we're really here representing a team of those 3 agencies that has been working together closely since last fall to come up with, and now more recently bring out to the community for feedback, a new concept for bus rapid transit and other improvements in the West 7th corridor from downtown St. Paul to the Mall of America. This is a corridor that has seen many, many years of study, most recently led by Ramsey County as they were undertaking work on the Riverview Streetcar project. And as that process concluded in the fall of 2024, our 3 agencies came together and have been working on this concept that you'll see today. So our agenda for today, we will go over the concept. Russ will take you through that element. I will share the results of the engagement work that we have just recently wrapped up, and then we'll move into kind of the next steps and where things are headed for here. But very briefly, before I hand things over to Russ, I did want to just situate us all in the lengthy history of study in this corridor. And there's a lot on this slide. I don't expect you to read every point. But what I do want to illustrate is that we are here in that green box all the way to the right, representing work that's been done over the last several months. But what you will not see represented in the numbers we share with you are the many, many voices that have been engaged in this process over the years. There is a strong consensus for the need for transit improvement in this corridor. There is also a strong need to improve service on Route 54. We've got a really strong route in that corridor today, but one that's not without challenges. And so this is the focus of our work, looking at bus rapid transit and a broader set of improvements. And something certainly that we have been channeling into this work is the voices of many who have been involved over the years. So with that, I will hand things off to Russ.
Thanks, Katie. Chair Barber and members, glad to be here today. Russ Stark, Chief Resilience Officer at the City of St. Paul. And you're going to get a little bit of the limited stop version of this presentation today. We've been out in the community talking to a lot of people about it. But we started with this knowledge of the last 20 years of discussion along this corridor and some of the concerns and barriers to other ideas that have come forward. And so really worked hard as the 3 organizations and agencies to come up with a concept that worked around some of those known challenges. And some of those include the concerns of businesses along West 7th, but particularly the businesses in those first few blocks between the XL Center moving west probably some of the busiest retail blocks in the city. And so challenges around congestion, especially around events, but also the need to retain some on-street parking. And so this concept worked around that particular challenge. The other issue that we all know about from these projects is the potential parking loss. And so with that in mind, brought forward a concept that keeps more than half of the street parking along the corridor. We've heard concerns over the years about the potential changes that the streetcar were going to make to the Highway 5 bridge over the river and impacts on traffic from MAC and others. And this concept avoids those challenges. We all know that transit speed and reliability is really important for a successful project. And so this concept has over 50% dedicated lanes throughout the corridor. There are also been concerns about the impacts of changes, potential changes that the streetcar project would have made to the Highway 5 bridge that may impact important cultural sites to many of our communities, including our Native community, as well as the historic Fort Snelling. And again, this concept basically makes no changes in that area, so works with and around those potential challenges. Coming together as the three agencies, we really saw the opportunity and need to make a generational reinvestment in West 7th Street. The need was highlighted this weekend with our giant 35-foot deep sinkhole on West 7th, unfortunately. It is a very old piece of infrastructure. We have 1885 water mains out in that street, among other features. We know that there's an opportunity to reinvest in transit, and the 54 already provides a great service and just needs a little bit of love and some upgrades. What we've heard over many years of engagement in the community is a concern about West 7th being awkward to cross, partly because of its width, partly because of its angle, and the many sort of intersecting streets that come in at different angles. So there's a real opportunity to improve safety, especially for pedestrians, and to think about what that experience is like of getting across that street. Finally, I'll skip a few of these, but really thinking about a cost-competitive project that we can move forward with within a reasonable period of time. One of the things that we've heard loud and clear from the community is, please do something soon. So I'll walk you just briefly through the concept for the corridor using this slide. In downtown, this corridor would use the recently built Gold Line stops and alignment, and so there wouldn't really be any need for any changes within downtown St. Paul from a capital perspective. Moving west toward the Mall of America, in purple you'll see a section there where the idea here is to actually avoid that first section of West 7th, as I was talking about, between the arena and the hospital essentially, and potentially moving the busway over to Smith Avenue. And having a two-way dedicated busway up there that would run between Kellogg up near the Smith Avenue parking ramp and West 7th past the hospital. Moving further west in the orange section, kind of the West 7th neighborhood Main Street, in this section, the concept proposes to have one-way dedication for a busway, and that would be westbound. And the reason for only one-way dedication in this area is that there is some delay, but less delay in this area. And we're trying to balance the need to keep the bus moving with the need for some street parking. And so by having one dedicated lane, it would allow us to keep street parking in that section on one side of the street. Continuing west, the concept here goes over the 35E interchange with two-way dedicated bus lanes, understanding that that is a pretty congested location at that interchange. So it would require some widening of the West 7th bridge over 35E to accommodate that. And that is a feasible potential anyway. Continuing west, this concept would then jog down to what is now a Canadian Pacific rail spur. And the reason for this jog is twofold. One, West 7th in this section between 35 and about St. Paul Avenue, on the north side of the street is basically a bluff. And so there's really no walk shed, there's no connection, there's nothing to connect to on the north side of the street. So by jogging down to the current rail spur, the busway would actually bisect the place where people are, where there are businesses. It's quite mixed use down there, and better serve people. The busway would then jog back up from the spur at around St. Paul Avenue back onto West 7th, and then come and have dedicated bus lanes in both directions in that section of South Highland, leading up to the Highway 5 bridge. That would require going down to one lane of traffic in each direction in that section, which would be a pretty significant change from traffic capacity today. And so that was one of the things that we wanted to highlight as a change. But essentially today there are already 5 lanes. There's 4 travel lanes and a center turn lane. In this scenario, it would still be 5 lanes, 2 dedicated bus lanes, 1 lane in each direction for cars, and a center turn lane. Continuing west, we would cross over on the Highway 5 bridge, go to Terminal 1 at the exact same location where the 54 goes today. So some upgrades potentially, but no major changes. A consideration, working with MnDOT, of the potential to use a shoulder on Highway 5 during congested periods. We haven't really done deep analysis of that yet, but some potential there. And then continuing west toward the mall, one significant thing to point out is a little bit of a bypass of the 34th Avenue interchange with a sort of an underpass of 494 that would cross over and get to American Boulevard well in advance of that 34th Avenue interchange. Again, to keep the bus moving and to avoid some of those congested areas. So that's the overview. I sped through that. There's a lot of detail here. Just to keep moving briefly, and happy to answer questions afterwards, this slide gives you a view of the dedication of bus lanes. So again, two-way dedicated in some areas, one-way in others. Of course, you've got dedicated lanes in downtown that exist, and some of the little bypasses after you cross the Highway 5 bridge. Overall, 12.5 miles from Union Depot to Mall of America, 21 stations, 16 of those would be new. Again, the ones in downtown wouldn't change, and 65% dedicated on the St. Paul side of the river. We know because of the kind of rough condition of the street that there are some opportunities to really think about a very different West 7th Street. I mentioned pedestrian safety being a key one, and the opportunity for things like bump outs in some locations. One of the other things we've heard from the community is a real desire to keep space for trees along a street like this. These kinds of streets can be very hot places, can feel pretty like fully hardscape, and there's a real desire to maintain enough space in boulevards for things like green space. I'll highlight in the upper right, there's many of these locations along West 7th where you got 2 streets intersecting West 7th quite close to each other, one that's a north-south and one that's an east-west. And we think, it's about 6 of those locations, and we think there'd be an opportunity to cut off car access for one of those legs in some cases, and then you could convert that space that is no longer accessible to cars into some additional, say, pull-in off-street parking or green space or a combination of those things. So kind of a creative way to repurpose some of the space just off of the corridor for things that the corridor itself might benefit from. One of the really additional key concepts here is that CP rail spur that I mentioned that the bus would run down to for a short stretch. That would require acquiring the entirety of the spur that runs essentially between downtown St. Paul and the former Ford plant, the now Highland Bridge site down in Highland Park. But that would be an opportunity for us to convert a big section of that spur into a bicycle and pedestrian trail. Shown here, be about a 5-mile new multi-use trail. In the section where the bus would come down onto the rail spur, there's an opportunity for both a 2-way busway and a trail alongside it, so there's enough space for that. In that area, there'd be some pinch points, but enough space overall. And so a real opportunity to turn this into a much better multimodal corridor, especially from a perspective of bicycling. Because West 7th is at that angle, there really are no other streets that make the same connections that it does. So the opportunity to have the spur sort of function as the parallel place for people to bicycle up and down the corridor would add a lot of value. This idea is in the St. Paul bike plan, among other places. And I mentioned down on the Hennepin County side, the idea of this 494 bypass, pretty significant, we think, in terms of keeping the bus moving and travel time. We haven't modeled the travel time of this bus yet, but we're confident it would be faster than the current 54 for some of these reasons, mostly about the dedicated lanes and things like this bypass. So very briefly, we are, still very early stages in this conversation, although 20 years into a larger community conversation around this corridor. And we think that this project development stage could last about 2 years, leading into what we would hope would be design and engineering of 2 to 3 years. That timeline of 4 to 5 years from now would line up with when MnDOT is already planning to resurface the street or mill and overlay most of West 7th Street in 2028 and 2029. So if this concept is to move forward and we can get all the public agencies to agree, then this project would supplant that mill and overlay on around the same time frame. Cost estimate here, we have estimated with maybe more confidence than we might have at this level on other projects because this corridor is so well known. A total capital cost here of about $500 million with a healthy contingency already built into that. The street itself, in terms of potentially full reconstruction or something close to it, is a substantial part of this cost. And you got the transit project, you've got the trail, you've got the need for buses, et cetera. And so all those components kind of come together to about this $500 million mark. I'll turn it back over to Katie.
All right. So the presentation that you just saw from Russ is by and large what Russ shared in the community meetings that we held in April of this year. And so I'll go through what the purpose of our engagement was and how that went. I'll say that by the numbers, we reached a large number of people in a short period of time between about March and May of this year. So we'll go into these in the following slides here. But starting out in terms of how we got the word out about this, we launched a project website, or the city led the project website launch on March 10th. And around that, we communicated with a lot of existing channels, including through social media and through email newsletters. Mayor Carter recorded a video that we were able to distribute and really amplify this message, really trying to get the word out to a lot of people who had been engaged in this process in the past, as well as those who use the corridor every day and were checking in for the first time. We had quite a bit of amplification that came through the news media, including just recently, there was an article in MinnPost last week. So this continues and I think has been a big part of getting the word out as well. We focused our engagement around driving folks to those 3 community meetings that we hosted in April. And we had about 88 people in attendance at those 3 meetings. But in addition, we went to 18 different meetings and events, really meeting people where they were at in existing channels. The neighborhood organizations along the corridor, the council ward offices and events that they held. We also met specifically with stakeholders who had been engaged through earlier phases of the Riverview project. We had connected with staff at Hennepin County, MAC, and the city of Bloomington throughout the process. And we've communicated with Ramsey County staff along the way as well. Ramsey County really charged the 3 agencies represented here with going out and engaging around this concept, but we've been keeping them in the loop as this has progressed over the last several months.
Madam Chair, if I may, just a quick question. Mm-hmm. And then did you also, with that, I'm assuming that the business community was engaged in all of this as well? Because we heard a lot from businesses just kind of over the past couple of years about changes that could happen in that corridor and impacts. And I know you've already made some of the, the one-way dedicated lanes and more parking for customers. But did you get a good number of people in this process from the business community?
Madam Chair and Council Member, we did meet with several of the businesses in particular who had been most engaged in the previous phases. I will say that is something that we're going to continue to be doing, is some more targeted business engagement even this month to really reach folks who we knew had those concerns in the previous phases.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I really do appreciate that. And you'll hear from members that, it's everybody's got a voice and a stake in this, and businesses have not unique, but it's a different type of stake in this, and there's a lot of history on West 7th, and it's just a proud corridor. And so I'm glad that you're going to be doing more outreach and engagement, and look forward to hearing some of that feedback.
Excellent. So these images give you a flavor for the larger rooms that we were in the Highland neighborhood and in the West 7th area at the Palace Rec Center on the lower left. And as we were engaging, we drove people to both ask us questions in the room and really get into good conversation, but also record their thoughts and positions to these 3 questions in a survey. So a lot of what I'll get into in the next few slides get into these really core elements. Do you support this new concept? What do you like? What are you concerned about? And what questions do you have? Really importantly, as we brought this out and are pivoting to a new kind of investment, we really wanted to hear what are the things that we need to be thinking about as this moves into a next stage. So this work just wrapped up. We closed the survey on May 4th, and moving in then to the top line results. So as we asked people, are you supportive of this? We saw that nearly 70%, so about 2/3, a little more than 2/3, were either very supportive or supportive of this concept. 29% were either skeptical or not supportive. So as we keep kind of that distribution of 2/3 of folks that we heard from in this phase with the support and a third, on the next few slides, I want to go into some more of the themes that we heard from people, really grouped into 4 key areas. So the first being thoughts around the transit concept itself, the BRT. The second piece being about the reconstruction of West 7th Street. The third piece being about the trail and that component. And the fourth being about implementation. How do we move forward from here? So on the following slides, we've got a lot of words that show up, and I'll just orient you to this. The larger the circle, the more we heard this sentiment in our comments. So we went through all of the comments that were received on that survey and tagged them into these themes. Those that are the farthest to the ends of the spectrum are representative of those who also said, I'm very supportive on the left, or I'm very opposed on the right. So you can see that distribution of the comments, and then the size itself shows you how much we saw those things. So in terms of transit, the headline here at the top of the slide, I think sums up what we heard, is that most people think the investment in dedicated lanes for transit, the 65% within the city of St. Paul, and kind of that balance between on-street parking, transit priority, and other needs, most people think it strikes the right balance. And those who said it didn't strike the right balance were really on both sides of that spectrum, either not enough or way too much dedication for transit. So we think that this concept kind of strikes that right balance and balances the needs of folks in the corridor.
Chair.
Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you, Chair. Katie, do you know if there was a difference between engagement of the businesses and the residents in terms of parking needs?
Madam Chair, Council Member, what we're presenting here is that overall summary. I will say that a lot of what we heard from folks was very localized, and we do know that people who we asked about that in the Smith Avenue segment, for example, we were talking with hospital stakeholders who had very specific and tailored needs to that segment. And so as we were moving through the engagement, we very actively tried to tie what we heard to the geography and the exact location of where those comments came from. Russ, I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, in terms of the overall comments, we didn't necessarily ask people to identify themselves either as a resident or a business in terms of the survey, but we definitely had a mixture of people come to the engagement events. I'll highlight we did have a couple of events co-hosted by the St. Paul Area Chamber of Commerce with some of the business community folk, but to your point, Councilmember, to your question, those needs can be competing sometimes, right? And we've got a wealth of data along this corridor, and so the concept specifically avoids any changes to parking in that area of highest parking demand between Kellogg and Smith, and then in that kind of next highest area of demand between Smith and 35E. We think between one-sided parking and those opportunities for additional parking at those places where we could block off access that I mentioned toward the end, we think it's striking a pretty good balance based on what we've heard to date. What we haven't heard is like, this can't work, even from people who may not be supportive in terms of the parking. No one's saying like, this can't work. Some people just have I think a doubt that there's a need for better transit, honestly. Pretty universally, people understand that the street needs reinvestment, regardless as to where they are on the transit question. And as we know, any major reinvestment in a street also has business impacts, right? Independent of the long-term effects on parking. And so we know that those concerns are going to be there regardless.
Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson.
Real briefly, on the skeptical or not supportive, you've touched on it a little bit. I'm just curious, did they want the former streetcar mode, or they don't want any change, nothing at all? Which end of skeptical or not supportive did they kind of land on? I'm curious.
Madam Chair, council member, I think without having the data in front of me right now, my sense of the community that we heard from was pretty well split between, we don't think anything can ever happen here. We don't know that we trust you to implement something given all the years of study.
Yeah.
And it's not the rail project that I was supportive of in the past phase.
Okay, thank you.
And then a handful of people who were. We heard from them too.
All right, so as Russ mentioned, many people said that they want to see things move forward now. The need for investment in this street is very apparent, especially now. And people want to see the multimodal improvements that we showed in this concept as well. And they want to see that balance with retaining some on-street parking. So we heard a lot of folks who clearly have been engaged in this process saying that the multimodal approach really resonated with them in terms of balancing, adding the trail element, adding more greening, adding more pedestrian accommodations on these corridors. Throughout this, you'll see continue to keep parking and balance that with the improvements being made, as well as concerns about business impact. I think, that was certainly a theme we heard and will continue to hear, as Russ said, with any street reconstruction project and with a transit project of this nature to be expected. But again, a lot of good support for a lot of the very specific elements of the reconstruction with multimodal improvements. And, actually the highest count of positive comments in support of any one element in this concept was for that trail component, with folks saying that they wanted to see something that could be akin to the Midtown Greenway, but for St. Paul, and really liking the co-location also of transit with that rail to re-envision how that spur functions today. Certainly, we heard from folks who had very localized concerns about where that spur runs relative to their home or business, and questions. A lot of questions generated about this trail component being a new element that wasn't studied in depth in the past process, which helps inform some of the work that would go forward from here. And then finally, again, owing to the 2 decades plus of work in this corridor, we heard that people really want to continue to be engaged, but they want to continue to be engaged as it moves forward, as we move into design, as we have more details, ensuring that businesses and community are part of that process, but not delaying moving forward so as to more broadly engage and not move forward. We heard a balance of folks, again, as with any project, asking whether it's necessary and concerned about costs. And then the key thing in the middle, in the big white circle, is questions about how would this be funded. So certainly, as we're talking about a major project, that financial plan was something that generated a lot of questions and something that continues to be the focus of conversations with Ramsey County, Hennepin County, with MnDOT as we think about how to move things forward.
On that point?
Councilmember Carter.
Thank you. And I know that your presentation shares some of this. As a commissioner in Ramsey County, having lived with this project for a long time and now here on the Metropolitan Council, I know I heard from past constituents, current folks in my district, the angst over just simply that nothing was happening. When it was determined that it was not feasible to move forward. And Ramsey County discontinued the Corridor Management Committee. People understood that that was Ramsey County taking a sigh and a moment to acknowledge so much work had been done, but that the concept that they were moving forward at that time was difficult to see evolve. So the question I got was, what is happening? Don't tell me nothing is going to happen on this corridor, and just a lot of angst about making certain something would happen. Although there were a lot of questions about the parking, there were a lot of questions about, what would happen with the configuration of streets and a new concept that had not yet arrived. Thank you, by the way, to the city of St. Paul for recognizing all the work that had happened and for determining to build on that work, along with Ramsey County, the state, Met Council, and other partners, because that gave a sigh of relief as folks began to call and email and say, well, it looks like something is possible. The question, though, being, knowing how we would have funded the earlier project, knowing that a large part of that was making certain that it was not just a transit project, but that it would have all the accompanying trim and street enhancements, the bells and whistles of a project such as had been designed previously. And now, it is not the concept that is being put forward, any of the designs that we are familiar with. It's a hybrid design that we have not yet figured out how to completely fund. So the questions that are coming to me now are exactly that. So how do we move this forward? And I just wanted to make that the big aha right now in this moment, as I am very anxious to know too how we partner for a project that isn't just the bus. It isn't just arterial BRT. It isn't highway BRT. It isn't dedicated BRT. It is something else, and it's what the community has been waiting for in terms of making sure we find the pathways, making sure we save the parking, making sure we add those new opportunities for the community along the sidewalks, and that we improve that corridor that has been waiting so very, very long with enhancements that come not just with a bus or a BRT, but with a new concept. I, on the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners, know that we knew our role. We knew that if in fact we were putting in LRT or a streetcar, we had a significant role to play, and we were preparing for that. This new concept has us all needing to redesign partnership. And I just, because that has been such a big deal for me, want to make it a big deal, as we think through that here together. And with our partners, again, thanking you, thanking Ramsey County, the Met Council, the state, all for just wanting to see something happen and learning now our new roles. And I realize we haven't learned it all. So I'll allow you to move forward in the conversation. I just wanted to put that forth. What are we calling this?
Madam Chair and Council Member, you hit on something that makes this concept unique, is that we haven't done anything like this exactly in our region before, and it's a new kind of partnership. And if I might, what you call out, I think, is illustrated well on this slide, which is truly that all three elements of improving transit, of fixing West 7th Street, and of delivering this trail are all made richer and possible by happening together. In terms of what we are calling it, we're calling it a new West 7th concept because it's new. We do anticipate that the transit element of this is probably a color line, more akin to the highway and dedicated guideway BRT than arterial BRT. So, that is where we're at in terms of thinking of this concept right now. But I would be remiss if we really didn't note that if this were to move forward just simply as an arterial BRT, we collectively would not see that same benefit for the community of the investment in transit lanes. Without BRT moving forward, West 7th Street wouldn't see that same level of investment in the pedestrian environment, in the condition of the street, and in everything inside of that right-of-way. And certainly if the element of bringing the trail, or excuse me, of bringing the rail spur into the BRT project were not moving forward, that trail would go unrealized as well. So it is this concept that, as we heard from community, really unlocks the things that people were asking for and have been asking for and seeking in this corridor for some time.
Thank you. You continue to need to straighten me out as I look at this and try to figure out what the new partnerships that can make this happen will be. So I'll just continue to listen.
And if I may, too, I think there are models for funding that we have seen through BRT investments when we look at the Gold Line and the Orange Line. We really did look to our local county funding partners to help with the capital investments. Obviously, there's a tie here, too, with MnDOT as to the reconstruction of the road. So, so there's options, but lots still in conversation.
Madam Chair, if I might, I think I just have 2 more slides here. So as we stand today, having concluded that initial engagement, the green box shows a lot of those areas we know to be future study elements. As this moves from concept into a project, there's a lot of work to do. We are at a 0 to 5%, I think, level of design. And that's built on the shoulders of 2 decades of work in this corridor, but quite a bit more to unlock with a lot of these technical areas. And then, of course, the questions to address in the near term are those that are in conversation in this room today. So in terms of next steps, where we stand today is that the time truly is now to dig into that financial plan and secure ultimately the funding commitments from project partners that would be necessary to move this forward. The need for that decision is tied to several other activities happening in the corridor as well, or in the region rather. Metro Transit, of course, we're undertaking our ABRT plan update this year to identify the JKNL lines by the end of this year. Starting in June, we'll be moving forward with a lot more of the robust analysis. And after that point, it would be extremely challenging to bring a West 7th corridor into that work. Right now, it is not part of that work. And the time in which we would be able to potentially accommodate that is very short. We're also really, as Russ mentioned, trying to align decision-making so that MnDOT has a clear sense of how to progress with the mill and overlay project that is planned to move forward for construction that would be folded into this effort if there's consensus on how to proceed here. And of course, as we continue conversations with Ramsey County, they are moving through their process to reallocate the funds that were previously dedicated to the Riverview corridor. So in terms of then, if those funding commitments do solidify, then the next steps of forming a project delivery structure for a somewhat unprecedented set of improvements would begin, and digging more into those issues that I identified on the previous slide. So that concludes our presentation, and we'll stand for more questions.
Councilmember Vento.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to begin with kind of a good news comment about the sinkhole. I was at a restaurant at noon today, right adjacent to the sinkhole. And as I was leaving, had a conversation with the owner who raved about how quickly reconstruction began and how hard everybody there is working, and just raved about it. Although a little rattling at first to get there, it wasn't a problem. I got there fine. And there was parking, and it was great. So kudos to the city and to whomever it is that's doing all the work out front. It meant a lot to that business owner. I want to go back to the slide, if we could, with the bubble that talked about crime and safety. And I'm wondering if there's a way during the community engagement and throughout this project to make sure that we as a Met Council, and I can use the royal we for a few more weeks, and the City of St. Paul and other partners can address this bubble in terms of describing the kinds of work we're doing to address crime and safety. I've been a member of a parish in this area for 30 years and worked there for 5. And in the last, I don't know how many years, the parish has had to just significantly increase the amount of money they spend related to safety. And it's been difficult. And actually, while I was working there, I won't belabor this too long because I'm known for belaboring things long. But there were a few times where I was interacting with situations that were a little alarming. And I get why people are concerned about crime and safety. So whatever we can do to try to address that in a really proactive way to show that everybody involved is working on crime and safety, I think it will be really helpful. The one question I have related to it, and I want to begin the question by prefacing that it was my experience that the issue, at least in the corner where I was working each day for 5 years, that the issue was perpetrators, people who were preying on people in need, the homeless. And that was the crime and safety concern that we experienced. Drug sales, all sorts of stuff going on. I'm concerned about the growing population of homelessness in that area, and I'm wondering what the status is with the gallery office building and whether or not it's known what the future will be for that building, and will there be additional residences provided there. I believe it's the responsibility of the whole region to address the homeless issue, and while that's a really virtuous, wonderful thing to say, I also know that it's really hard to get everybody on board with that. But I worry about St. Paul and Minneapolis taking this all on themselves. And I think it's unfair to both cities or the rest of the world to rely on Minneapolis and St. Paul. So Russ, if you would.
Sure. Chair Barber, Councilmember Bento, I think I don't know the specific answer to the gallery office building status as of today, but you raise a ton of great points and issues that our staff across the board are working on and trying to address every day. I was in a meeting this morning with Chief Henry of the police department, where he was actually we were talking about the new golden time on Selby and how exciting it was. And he was actually talking about how Selby Avenue today is in such better shape than it was a couple of decades ago. And he attributed part of it to the fact that since the street work happened, the place has looked more invested in. And so certainly we need more than just investment in our streets to deal with the challenges of our unhoused population and some of the both nuisance and criminal activity that tends to happen around those folks. And there's a lot of that work going on, and the needs are very large, as you know, and it's going to take all levels of government to work on it effectively. That said, I think we're seeing really good progress from today versus 2 or 3 years ago in terms of the ability of many levels of government to create new partnerships in that work. And so it's an ongoing, it's a huge ongoing body of work, I would say, at the city, working with our partners at the county and the state and others. That said, what we have going for us today in terms of that specific concern in this corridor is what we know is that sort of criminal behavior goes down when there are other people around doing other things, right? And so everything that we can do to this corridor to add vitality, to add life, to bring more people to it is working in our favor in terms of making those kind of more pro-social spaces and less antisocial behavior. So thanks for the question.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Additional questions, comments? Councilmember Johnson?
Just briefly again, thank you for this. I'm excited about what's going on and what's happening. Born and raised St. Paul, so love the community. And I also know that we've got a very exciting time coming up with the 2050 planning process. So I'm assuming this will all be integrated, but to the point of multi-jurisdictional, multi-agency, it'll be interesting to see how some of that maybe plays out in the 2050 planning. And I don't know if you guys integrate very closely with that, but coming off of community development and now in transportation, everything is integrated and touches. And so when you look at the totality of 2050 and our goals, they fall into all of those categories, whether it's community development or transit and transportation, and then you've got all the differing agencies. And I personally think it's super exciting that we are doing this differently than we have before, with kind of the perfect storm of partners coming together. And I really like the outreach that you're starting, and I think there's probably a lot of hope and enthusiasm. St. Paul is strong. It'll come back. It's got a good future in front of it, and I think this is one of those projects that's going to be kind of a spine to connect it to the whole region and to let people know that the whole region really does care about St. Paul, and especially downtown St. Paul, and especially this part of St. Paul. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, additional questions, comments? Councilmember Carter?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I am glad that you brought up the dynamic of additions to projects that we have seen. An example would be the B-line in Hennepin County's adding funds for enhancements to that line. You know, this one looks so different, but there are ways of our partnering, and I'm just thankful that the team is working together and concertedly keeping all partners involved and actually sharing, you know, what has been done in the past to enhance corridors, to make certain that where the funding does not exist today for this entire project and all its enhancements, we can explain to all the partners how a full partnership of our all making it possible can make this go. We know that with the Corridor Management Committee, you know, as we had before, we'd have marked decisions that would take place in the Corridor Management Committee, and then the project would come forward. It's not as neat, you know, here. You've laid out some of the things that have to happen. Can you just imagine for us the possibility of this? You know, you talked about the time frame that it would probably take for this to evolve. What do you see as a firm start? You know, we've not placed this in our new plan for BRT. We do look forward to the state mill and overlay decisions. This doesn't just need a mill and overlay. This needs more. So I'm assuming that we're looking for the state to say, instead of doing that, you know, we see our role in this bigger project for some additional enhancements that will be covered in other ways. And then for Ramsey County to look at the possibilities of aiding with funding that had previously been assigned to the Riverview project. How do you see all of these pieces hopefully coming together?
Madam Chair.
You know, what timing?
Council member, you know, as we sit here today in May of 2025, I think that an optimistic vision for how to move forward would be that there's consensus reached with all of the parties on how a financial plan comes together for this corridor, and key decisions made by each body about entering into that partnership. From there, we would anticipate that this would follow a major project structure made up of the organizations that have been part of this, and that there would be a likely corridor management committee or something similar for this collection of work to progress with decisions stemming from there. So I think we are hopeful that this moves into that next step and that some of those initial decision points would follow later this year into early next.
We are into summer, so hopefully by fall we see our way forward in this and are organizing some kind of structure that also keeps community involved, i.e. a corridor management committee. And I would like finally to ask that as you move forward in these next steps, particularly in gathering additional business input, that we would hear back, you know, as to what that input has been and how businesses are more formally providing opinion on the good of this project for their corridor, for their livelihoods, for the future. I hope within the next couple of months you're getting that done because all of this is concurrently moving together.
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, additional questions, comments? All right, I just have a couple of comments. So first of all, as you might expect, I hear a lot from especially transit riders, transit organizations, and it's not always good. They're very excited about this. Like, I'm hearing just great feedback. People are really responsive to how you've looked at the neighborhoods and how this would move through the corridor. So, you know, I don't know if that always gets to you, but I've been hearing that a lot because they're usually not shy about telling me what they think. So, and it's all been positive, for sure. And then the other thing I think I just really want to flag, when it was just a little over 6 months ago that Riverview was was stopped. And so to get all these organizations together and working and to come and have a concept plan in this short time window, I mean, kudos to all of you. I mean, from the City of St. Paul, MnDOT, our capital projects BRT office, I mean, it really was a lot to get this done in this short period of time. And I think we all know that this is such an important corridor for the region. So but really kind of getting everyone together and settling on some of this so it can become real faster, I think is really significant and really important because we all know that this is a need and it's really nice to see. So just want to kudos. Very, very well done. So.
Chair Barber, thank you for that. And Councilmember Carter, I think to your earlier point about sort of what do we call this and how do we make the pieces fit together? As the city, we're not bringing a lot of the capital resources to the table, and in fact, really not any right now. But as I'm saying to all the partners, like my role on this is really to make everyone a little bit uncomfortable because we have to get a little bit uncomfortable in order to figure out how to do a new partnership for this sort of thing. And so we're just trying to have those conversations relatively quickly because of these timeline constraints that we all face. And so it's like the opportunity is really big, and at the city, our fallback position is if we can't all agree on this quickly, then this corridor probably does become our top priority for the next ABRT round, and so we really want to get to that decision soon. Thank you.
Any final questions, comments? All right, well, thank you for coming here. I really appreciate you, Russ, coming and spend some time. Katie, always. So, yeah, thank you. This was very helpful. I think everyone really wanted to learn some more, so we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry to keep you so long.
That's why we put them first. So, all right, now we're on to our non-consent agenda. Our first business item is business item 2025-109, the same week item, purchase of transit master on route systems. And we have Jody Jansen and Paul Colton here.
Yeah, good afternoon, Madam Chair, council members. I'll take the first item and Jody will take the next item, but we're both here to answer all the questions you may have. I'm Paul Colton, Fleet Manager for MTS Contracted Transit Services, and I have the following proposed action for all of you this afternoon, and that is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute a sole source contract 25P103 with Vontas to provide 39 on-route systems that includes installation, licensing, and configuration in an amount not to exceed $897,685. These systems are critical for our fixed route infrastructure that will support the 2025 expansion of Southwest Transit Service, the new service they're doing to the airport, our new micro transit service that will be implemented this fall and winter, as well as the 2025-2026 Network Now fixed route expansion that will begin this fall and next year. Funding for this project comes from regional transit capital funds and is in the current capital budget. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Vento.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have one kind of goofy question. In the background information, the 3 bullets, it listed phase 1, phase 2, phase 3.
Yes.
Those 3 phases add up to 40 systems. So is there an error there, or is my math way off?
Chair Barber, council member, I believe it is 39, and I believe we calculated 1 spare for Southwest Transit that we are not purchasing. So we'll fix that to 10 for the council meeting.
Okay. Thanks.
Am I correct on that, Jody?
Correct, yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it didn't mean to sound like a nitpicker, but.
No, thank you. It's good to have us all on the same page.
Okay, thanks.
Appreciate that.
All right, additional questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2025-109, same week.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Vento. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Osman. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right, thank you. All right, on to our second business item, which is business item 2025-24, which is procurement of 5 transit vans utilizing the state of North Dakota contract. Turn it back to you guys.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, council members. I'm Jody Jansen. I'm the Senior Project Administrator for MTS and Fleet Purchasing. This afternoon, I'd like to present business item 2025-24. In this item, we would ask that the Metropolitan Council authorize the Regional Administrator to execute Contract 25P212 with North Central Bus and Equipment for the purchase of 5 replacement transit vans in an amount not to exceed $650,000. These 5 replacement transit vans will operate in Southwest Transit's prime on-demand service. This will allow Southwest Transit to maintain a state of good repair for its fleet. This item is contingent upon the approval of a joint powers agreement between the Metropolitan Council and the State of North Dakota Office of Management and Budget. The business item to approve that JPA is scheduled to be presented to the Management Committee on May 28th. Funding for this purchase will come from Regional Transit Sales and Use Tax. This project is included in the Council's authorized capital program and was approved as part of the capital amendment. With that, I'd open it to questions.
All right, thank you. Questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2025-24.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Carter. Is there a second?
Second.
Then by Councilmember Osman. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. And now we're on to business item 2025-114, same week, which is North Star Equipment Lease Agreements. We have Brian Funk and Bruce Carden. Bruce, well, hi. All right.
Good evening, Madam Chair, council members. My name is Bruce Carden. I'm the Deputy Chief Operations Officer for Maintenance. Part of my responsibility is for the North Star commuter rail. And so the proposed action that we have is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute a lease agreement, 25 MO36, with Dallas Area Rapid Transit, which is DART, on behalf of Trinity Railway Express, codenamed TRE, and with Amtrak of use of idle North Star equipment subject to FTA concurrence. A little background on this request. Last year, DART approached us, letting us know that in 2026, they will be hosting the World Cup soccer events there, as well as other host cities across North America. And they have a need for additional vehicles for passenger transportation for that event. They are seeking this equipment a year in advance of the event so that they can rehab some of their current equipment by replacing it with a train from us. This is a picture of the TRE train that runs there. You can see similar equipment. The bi-level Bombardier vehicles that they use are the same that we use. Their locomotives are a little bit different. They have a broader range of locomotives, but similar equipment. The request from Amtrak comes as a result of a significant portion of their fleet has been sidelined due to corrosion concerns on that fleet. That fleet of Comet 2 cars that they have taken out of service support the Downeaster, the Hiawatha, the Borealis, and the Amtrak Cascades routes. Amtrak initially approached MnDOT, and they organized a discussion with us to talk about potentially using our vehicles on the Hiawatha service. As of those routes, that's the only one that doesn't utilize a dining car. And because our equipment can't be set together with their equipment, they need to run it as a set, train set on its own. So this is a picture of one of the Comet cars that they've sidelined. And essentially between the two, their DART is requesting 1 locomotive, 3 coach cars, and 1 cab car with the ability to add additional equipment if it becomes available. Amtrak, they're requesting 1 locomotive, 2 coach cars, and 1 cab car. Just to give you a concept of what these different cars are, of course, the locomotive's very recognizable with the front end. The cab car is the one picture on the right, which is where an operator can operate the train from that side of the train. In between are are additional coach cars that don't have the cab stand where the operator can operate the train from. To give you a picture of our entire fleet, you can see that Metro Transit, this represents different train sets, and our current service requires 2 trains to run the service. And based on the current loads of passengers, that can be accommodated with a 3-car train, which is a locomotive, 3 cars, 2 of which are coaches and 1 of which is a cab. And under this scenario, Amtrak would have the locomotive and 3 cars, and DART would have a locomotive and 4 cars, and we would still have enough to operate our service with a full spare train set and some additional equipment in case of any challenges or incidents that may occur. For the past several years since COVID, we have had most of this extra equipment mothballed and just awaiting a need for service. And so it's just unused equipment that has been sitting idle, and this is an opportunity to get that equipment in use. There's, as I've mentioned, our current service is easily met with the remaining cars that we would keep, and we've reached out to FTA for information about what is needed for their authorization. They've responded with that list of items, and if authorized to proceed with negotiations, we'd be able to provide that to them for their concurrence. Some other considerations that we would take is that we would expect the lessees to have insurance on those and bear the cost of that insurance, as well as they would maintain the vehicles while in their care and make sure that they're in compliance with FRA requirements throughout the lease period. With that, what questions do you have?
Thank you. Councilmember Chambliss?
Oh, yes, thank you. My question is, how are the cars transported? Are they going to go on a track and, head to Dallas, or how does that work? And then how is that going to be paid for?
Yes, great question, Councilmember. The trains would be transported either by Amtrak or by BNSF would be the likely carriers. And there are a few different ways that they could actually transport them from here to Dallas, or from here to the Hiawatha line runs from Chicago to Milwaukee. And Amtrak would likely transport from here to Chicago, Milwaukee area, and DART would be responsible for transporting them and have insurance for them in transport and contract that with either Amtrak or BNSF most likely.
Councilmember Vento, then Osmond. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. And so the lease agreement, I'm assuming that contains all the details about how much it's going to cost, but I don't think that's on here yet.
Correct. That, Councilmember, that is being negotiated, or would be part of the negotiation process. Of course, we've had some initial discussions with them, and as we kind of put together some proposals for the costing, what came in for both Amtrak and DART were very similar, and so we feel comfortable that we kind of have a check and balance to make sure that we're at we're at a place where we can negotiate market value or an appropriate lease rate.
Councilmember Vento?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bruce, has this been done between other transit agencies, something similar to this?
Yes. Madam Chair, council member, from time to time, different agencies have leased equipment to each other. Amtrak fairly often does this in the Northeast Corridor to help supplement their fleet with other fleets that are owned by transit agencies. And so we've had opportunity to look at other lease agreements that have taken place in the industry to help give us information to negotiate in good standing.
Good, that's always good to know that we don't have to invent the wheel. Madam Chair, if I could, Bruce, one more question. Do we have any sense as to how the FTA will, how their timeline and any issues that they may raise? Is there any reason to be concerned about getting concurrence from them?
Madam Chair, council member, I think the current concern with the FTA is response time.
Okay.
We know that they are, challenged staffing wise and for other reasons. And so that is our primary concern is once we do reach out, their ability to respond quickly. We expect, as mentioned, these kinds of leases have been approved, and so there's an expectation that, unless there's some unknown concern that they have, that they would approve this. We have no reason to be concerned about that piece of the equation.
So the quicker we act, the faster we can get it in front of them.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councilmember Osman?
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to know how long it will take the lease running for how many years, and what happened after the lease expired?
So the, Madam Chair, council member, the lease terms for DART are expected to last at least for the initial equipment. As soon as we can get it approved and they can get it approved, they'd like delivery as soon as possible. And would be completed in August of 2026 after the World Cup events. For Amtrak, they also would like the equipment as soon as possible, and their timeframe that they're expecting is sometime in the first quarter of 2026 when their lease would be completed. I think it's a little bit unknown how the fleet will be utilized after that timeframe is completed.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I then entertain a motion to approve business item 2025-114, St. Lee.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Vento, second by Councilmember Chambliss. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Now we are on to our final business item, which is business item 2025-115, also same week, which is the Metro Green Line Rail Car Mover, and we have Jim Alexander here. Welcome.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Before I get into the business item, I want to give you a little background on the project. Again, Jim Alexander, Project Director for the Green Line Extension. The reason why we're here is we need a rail car mover to transport vehicles, light rail vehicles, out to the west part of the project. The project overall is a little over 85% done. And we're anticipating doing some testing out in the west reach, Southwest Station up to Beltline in Eden Prairie to St. Louis Park. And that's going to happen this fall. And so we need a vehicle to push the LRVs out because we won't have power from Target Field out to Beltline at that time. And so the purpose here is to seek approval for a purchase of a rail car mover. So we started out with a procurement on this piece. We went on a competitive procurement, and we had one bidder, the same bidder that's Ryan Equipment that's on this business item here. And it was determined that their bid was non-responsive. And so we worked with the procurement office to determine, see if we can do a sole source. There was a pretty extensive search for available vehicles that fit our needs. We have special needs in terms of braking and being able to pull these vehicles. up and over bridges and through tunnels. And so we've landed with Ryan Equipment. So we're proposing to get into a sole source procurement. So this proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute a sole source contract 24P298R with Ryan Equipment to provide rail car mover equipment in an amount not to exceed $572,320. With that, Madam Chair, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Jim. Questions or comments? All right, seeing none, then I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2025-115, same week.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Osman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Johnson. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that does conclude our business for the evening. As you can see, a number of our items are same week because we did decide to cancel the one meeting. So all of those will go non-consent to the council. If there's no disagreement, the second item can go on the consent agenda. Okay. All right. Now we're on to information items. We have two information items this evening. The first one is the highway harm study, and we have Bethany Brandt Sargent here to present.
Thank you, Chair and members. My name is Bethany Brandt Sargent, and I am the project manager for this study. And so today, I'm just here to give a brief overview. I believe a few of you have already seen this, so it'll be old news to you, but we're excited to really kick off this study as we move it forward through our process. So we're starting with this project right now because we know the value that highways bring. What we maybe don't know so much is what challenges they also bring. So they've connected our communities across the region. They've been important for economic development, but we know that they have some impacts and unintended consequences to the communities that are adjacent to those corridors. So this study is really going to give us a new framework and a new way to understand more comprehensively what highways do. And through this work, we'll really start to identify those tangible solutions to ensure that we're developing the best projects for the best community benefit. Throughout this project, we're going to be exploring the history of the regional highway system and understand the laws, the processes, and how they were developed. And we're going to connect with the people who were most impacted, both past and present, and lean on a lot of the good work that's been done in the region so far. We're going to determine those opportunities to do better and create more holistic projects and advance understanding and supporting change for building a better transportation system. We have both process and outcome project goals. We're really focusing on a robust engagement strategy to build consensus about what highway harms mean and what it means to mitigate those harms. We're really focused on the outcomes and the framework of understanding and those tangible tools and guidance for mitigation, and looking to gather commitments at all agency levels to advance this work. The project objectives here is really to gain a thorough understanding of all of the issues and contributing factors, organizing those approaches based on the shared goals and agreements, really centering the people who have been a part of this work and who are impacted by this work the most, and then mapping out those longer-term steps for better solutions in our highway project development processes. We have three organizing concepts here, and the first is that infrastructure is complex. So when we're building a corridor, we know that we're providing benefits for communities, but they often do come with burdens for others. So teasing out the benefits and the burdens and figuring out how to create balanced projects is really an important part of this work. We're also bringing in a public health framework so that we can take a holistic lens approach of the things that we are considering in this work. And then we also know that there's been a lot of trauma around these highways, whether it's from decades past and there was displacement, or whether you just have a lot of anxiety when you're driving from traffic crashes. The transportation system does come with trauma, and we want to be open to learning from people who have experienced those traumas and being humble in our learning.
Madam Chair, just a quick question again.
Councilmember
Thank
Johnson.
you for this. And are we talking about all highways, whether it's a federal highway, a state highway?
This
You know,
project,
yeah.
yes, thank you, Chair, members. This project is focusing on our principal arterials. So for this work, we are really focusing on interstates, freeways, those access-controlled highways. Future work may be able to expand on this, but one of the requirements in the contract is that the analysis is repeatable. So we could add future work after we've finished this phase, but really the focus is on highways.
Okay, and just because I'm new, sorry, I have a curve to get through here. And is this then on, it can be existing highways to inform future highways, it can be highway reconstruction, it can be any and all of that?
Any and all, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then we'll get to some of those harms in one slide here. The project schedule is shown on the screen. We kicked off this project in late 2024 after a pretty extended procurement process. We have started to engage with committees, including this one, as well as our TAB and TAC committees. And then we'll be doing the research and engagement work throughout this year in 2026, and we'll wrap up in early 2027. So the study approach here really is beginning with a literature review. And through that review, we've identified these 8 harms categories, and we are open to learning through research and engagement whether our categories are correct and complete. Once we've done kind of the identification of categories, we'll start to look at the quantitative and qualitative evaluation metrics within each of those categories, and then developing the mitigation toolbox, the strategies and approaches to mitigate those harms, and then test those tools on a set of 8 pilot corridors from across the region. And we will be looking to evaluate a variety of corridors, so not just like the urban core corridors that we're very familiar with, like 94. We're looking for a diverse set of perspectives for highways that were planned through communities, around communities, early in the process. 94 was one of the newest or first highways, going all the way to new ones under project development right now.
Madam Chair.
Councilmember Johnson.
Do we do this also then for transit corridors?
No, this is specific for highways.
No, I know this project is, but just as a Met Council, understanding that we've got a lot of these things that are, I would say, valid harms for transit corridors too. Is that kind of, I'm making that assumption. So are these harms different for highways than they might be for a transit corridor? I'm just thinking about people are traveling in all kinds of different modes everywhere, and we have things happening all the time. So is this something that we've done before in transit corridors or trail corridors or all the kinds of corridors that people are trying to move around in?
Thank you, Chair and Member. That is a great question. I think my focus as the highway planner and MTS planning is going to be on the roads. As I mentioned, our analysis is intended to be repeatable, so theoretically we could take this work and apply it to transit networks, bike networks, but what you would naturally expect is that some of the harms categories would be worse and some of them might not be so bad, depending on the mode and the location. So I think it would depend on.
And I should have been more clear, Madam Chair, I apologize. So like Highway 55, we all have our favorite corridors in our communities, right? And so we're working on getting BRT there someday. So it's both a transit potentially, although the city's got buses, all over that place. But that's how I'm just trying to figure out how you marry the two.
And if I may, this is a specific study that was called out in the Transportation Policy Plan. And so, as Bethany mentioned, there's been a lot of look at the value and the benefits of the highway system, but not this piece, this directly. And it kind of ties in with some of the work that we had done looking at the equity analysis of transportation funding, which tends to be the bigger projects, like some of these road projects. So it is a little more specific to this particular study. We do look at some of those other modes and in different ways that tie in some of the same thinking, but maybe not as directly. So.
If I could add to that, Chair. This, as far as we can tell, we did an extensive peer review before we contracted this project. Something this comprehensive has not been done here. And so we are learning as we go along a little bit. We do know that people have done elements of each of these components of harms or this approach to a study, but not as comprehensively. So maybe you can hold your question, and if you're satisfied with the results, we can come back and think about how to do it differently for other modes.
Yeah, and again, apologies for that. I was just in my head and I didn't get it out, but when you've got highway and potential transit that will overlay, will this get wrapped in? But you don't have to answer tonight because the chair helped me figure out what we're doing.
I do think also that, transit might be a possible mitigation that might show up as a mitigation tool in some of these harms. Like if you're thinking about connection and access to jobs. BRT is a great accelerator for access to jobs if your community has limited access. So we may see more relationships between the various modes when we're starting to think about mitigation as well.
Okay, thank you.
And then, so for our engagement approach, we do have kind of 3 levels of engagement that we're taking. The first is internal. We have a project management team that includes members of council staff from community development and MTS, transportation. We'll be using committees like this one, the Equity Advisory Committee, TAB, and TAC. We have also established a technical advisory committee, and they met last week, the first kickoff meeting of the technical advisory committee. And then the Highway Harms Policy Group, which we'll talk about a little bit in the next slide. And then we have experts making up our research and equity panel. For external engagement, we will be doing some community-based organization outreach, focus groups, listening sessions. We're really trying to cast a wide net for community engagement so we can capture the variety of experiences and perspectives on what the constraints of the highway system might be.
And Madam Chair, will we be involving some of the large movers of commerce, in those corridors to get their input on this as well? Because these highways are also the lifeblood of commerce. And so, I've been watching kind of interestingly, the reimagining of 94, and there's just all kinds of input there and where MnDOT is kind of going with that. So, that's just critical to our economy and a lot of our sectors of strength here. So I'm assuming that we'll be robustly engaging them too?
Correct,
awesome.
Yes. So within the advisory groups, we have, as I mentioned, the technical advisory committee, the policy group, and then these committee presentations. So our technical advisory committee is made up of subject matter experts from agencies all across the region. Those are state agencies, the council, counties, cities, and in a variety of various subjects: public health, transportation, community development, trying to bring as many perspectives as possible into this work. Our Highway Harms Policy Group is 8 to 10 folks of community-based organizations who will be participants and guiding the policy framework of the study. And so I'm going to move to that next. This policy group is, we're looking for community-based organizations who work with highway-adjacent communities and people who have experienced the types of harms that we're focusing on this study. We are looking for representation across the region and for organizations who can make a 2-year commitment. So we've I believe in the attachments to this info item, the organizations that we have identified for outreach is in there. We have reached out to a small subset so far based on their relationship to the principal arterial system, the communities that they are involved with. And we have received some feedback and willingness, and they will be meeting for the first time on Wednesday evening. And one question I do have for this group is if anyone would like to serve as an ex officio member, you can talk to Chair Barber or Jenna or myself. We would love to have someone there.
Madam Chair.
Councilmember Johnson.
And again, I'm interested in this in a big way. And again, I will just think about kind of my neck of the woods of the region, but it's certainly pervasive throughout the region in a good way. But you can see where companies are making big investments right now in these major corridors. So there have been some recent announcements, along the I-94 corridor heading northwest, but there's been big investments in all around the region in these corridors. And that is because it's on a major corridor and they can move that commerce and they can get everything that they need into their facilities and back out of their facilities, whether it's an innovation, a lab, headquarters, or warehouse transit operation. So I think this is very good, but I also want to make sure that those people who've made those investments, those companies that are coming into this region or expanding in this region, understand that this work is going on so that they don't kind of catch on the backside of it. Anything that rightfully so might need to be addressed by them, but as an investor in our economy here and in jobs here, I used to work at Greater MSP, so you can kind of probably get where my mind is at. But we work really hard to make sure that we keep our businesses here, expand our businesses here, don't lose them to other regions, and then attract our businesses here. And I will just say, I won't go into it, but it's just harder to do right now in our world economy based on things that are out of our control. So I just want to make sure that they have a seat at the table. I know key players in the trucking transportation industry specifically that service a lot of these businesses, and I just want to make sure that they're aware of the right people that they can put somewhere into this process are part of it as well. And we all know there are give and takes for everything, right? There's risk reward, and so I just want to make sure that we don't have a product that comes out of this that when you look back at it, you're like, well, how would we be able to really do that? Because it might hinder some of these businesses that people in this region rely on for income and goods and services more broadly outside of our region. So you know where I'm coming from. Thank you.
If I may, just a little bit, as we outline these studies in the transportation policy plan, we look at a lot of different factors in different spaces. We said this is specific to this one topic of highway harms. We've also done a truck corridor study that really looked at how freight moves in and out of the region, and it does align with where those investments are happening. And what it did is also opened up pathways for us to get extra money from the federal government at the time to help improve those corridors. So it's like you have to look at, as we look at these different studies that are in the policy plan, they all come together in a puzzle, and it's up to us to kind of interpret how they overlap and where they do and they don't. But it's definitely something we look at. We do have specific freight representation on tab for that specific reason that we need to have that voice at the table. And so that's how some of those other pieces do get embedded in this as well. So.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilmember Chambliss.
So as far as the representatives for the state, is MnDOT going to be included? And I would imagine that they've done I know they do highway safety studies. So how are we utilizing their information and expertise?
Thank you, Chair and Member. MnDOT is involved in this study in a variety of different ways. They are on the project management team. They have multiple staff members that contribute on the technical advisory committee, and they will be participating as an ex officio member on the policy group as well. So they are there. We also are bringing in a lot of research that we've already completed either at the council or with MnDOT, including the Regional Safety Action Plan. So a lot of that analysis is easy to lift into this. I forget a couple other things, but we are trying to leverage as much research and study that has already been completed with this, because there are so many other topics that we can then spend the time and effort to build on.
Makes sense.
Councilmember Carter?
Thank you. I appreciate hearing the presentation again, and had been a part of the Equity Committee when you were there and shared this information with that committee. Many of the same questions came up about whether this work is done just for the highway study as you are presenting it, or if the Metropolitan Council and all of its work is looking at harms and in similar ways. I am speaking up because at that committee, which Chair Pacheco led, in the discussion, there was some talk about whether a member of the Equity Committee would be able to serve, and or whether a council member appointed already to the Equity Committee or its chair would be able to serve. I believe you heard that conversation as well, Councilmember Osman. And I am wondering whether there have been any particular designs to how that representation will actually end up coming from different areas of the Met Council.
Yes, thank you, Chair and members.
I know you asked the question about this team.
Yes, so I think I will fess up and say we overlooked the ex officio members when we were trying to put all the puzzle pieces of the community-based organizations together, looking for a good representational mix across the region. And so we do need to put some thought into who would be the correct council member or the best to leverage all of your time and expertise in those overlaps. And so I think I would probably defer to you all to select who would be best.
I simply offer that up then as we think about the members of this committee and who might be willing to serve. And I'm not volunteering anyone or myself, but certainly those members who are on the Equity Committee also felt that that could be an appropriate suggestion as well. I'll offer that to Madam Chair.
Yeah, that's a great comment, I think, because there is overlap with some of these things. But again, it's I'm not going to voluntold anyone. So we can just sort of talk about afterwards who might have time available and be interested in doing the work, because we all have a lot of meetings, so it's figuring out who has the time and is and the interest in it. Councilmember Vento.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Clearly, there's been a lot of work done on this, and I would just like to offer a couple suggestions. One is I would encourage you, as it relates to community-based organizations, to consider both Trellis and Minnesota AARP in order to represent the aging community because of the significant growth in our elders, and being one of them. While many of these organizations clearly have elders in it, I think we need some voices that speak directly to the issues related to the elder population. The other thing that I would suggest is that either as it relates to the community-based organizations or going back to the technical where you've got the city and government groups, that you think about specifically cities that have been impacted by highways. And I'm going to use one as an example. I don't know if they share any appreciation for my bringing them up specifically, but I'll bring up Newport. Newport is a community that, with the redevelopment of Highway 61, the sense of community there, I think, has changed quite a bit. It's more freeway-like because they're right just south of 494 now. And so 61 looks very different than it did 25, 30 years ago. And it feels very different for the community. And you've got businesses on both sides. It's just changed very much. And I think it would be good to either have small businesses from communities like Newport and or city representatives from communities like Newport who can describe the impact of that highway. And not that it's going to change it back, but it could help inform future decisions that are going to be made that are similar to that. So with that, I'll shut up.
Thank you, Chair and Member. That is a great point. We have looked across the region at cities who have been primarily impacted by highway construction in a variety of ways. One of the challenges with inviting staff to participate in TACs, especially staff from small towns or small cities, is they don't have the capacity to contribute. That is not to say that their contributions don't matter. It's that the TAC isn't maybe the best format. But if you could share contact information, or I can work with our communications team, we can certainly work to set up a focus group or some similar types of engagement so that we can still collect their stories. Because that's finding staff who are available to deliver extra work for the council is a big ask right now.
Madam Chair, I totally appreciate that, and as somebody who has often talked about how townships and cities, small cities, have that challenge, I think that on an issue like this might be something they'd really engage in. So I think we can maybe try both routes as possibilities.
Okay, thank you all. So moving on to the research and equity panel, the consultant team does include the set of researchers, and they are bringing some national expertise and thought leadership to this study as a consultant to the consultants, you might say. So they have spent a lot of time researching both locally and nationally the impacts of highways, both specifically like N35 and I-94 in the region, as well as some of the more broad concepts of the harms that we'll be considering in this study. And so I think with that, we're at these discussion questions. So if there's anything more that you all would like us to consider on these two topics, or otherwise, I'm happy to stand for questions. Otherwise, I can wrap up with next steps.
Additional questions, comments? Well, as you mull it over, if you have additional things, by all means. Tony, did you have? Councilmember Carter.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. Again, I thought the categories were quite mushable, if you will, and certainly would have questions about, well, does this fit there? And almost every time I think of one, it fits somewhere there. And so I'm not feeling as though I need to suggest additional categories. There may be others who do, but I thought you all have done a really good job of putting those forth. I know that I could suggest a number of other organizations looking at what has been listed so far and will. So I would just ask the question, do you want us to send those to you in an email after this session? I could list them off, but probably don't need to. And I know that not everyone will end up at the table, but just want to make sure that we give you the suggestions that we have.
Thank you, Chair and Member. I would very much appreciate an email. I will not be able to read my notes tomorrow. So if you could send those, I cannot commit to their participation, but I can commit to reaching out to them and asking.
Yeah, thank you. Will do.
Councilmember Johnson.
And just again, I'm sure, well, I'm not sure, so that's why I'm asking. So just also in your engagement, and I remember too, on the I-94 reimagining, I work at a Chamber of Commerce, and in my work inbox, I was being invited to virtual meetings, and I know other chambers were too, because I could see them on the virtual screen and we were talking to each other. So will Chambers of Commerce be involved in this, since they're very active in transportation issues and access to communities and jobs and wealth building and things like that?
I believe, yes, they will be, not in terms of the policy group, although we do have the Minnesota Transportation Alliance as one of the organizations to represent that point of view on the committee. But again, we will be doing dozens and dozens of focus groups. And so again, if you do have connections that you'd like us to reach out to, having those introductions is very helpful to get a foot in the door.
I appreciate that, thank you. And I used to be on the board for the Transportation Alliance, so definitely, grounded, great group. And we should all know who those Chambers of Commerce funds, especially the bigger ones, because they have a role in this and they will be advocating, and they have good people that might offer up to some of this work or host or whatever to reach out. So if you need a list of Chambers of Commerce, I could get them for you, or if you Google Minnesota Chambers of Commerce, you'll get them. But I'm happy to help you and make those introductions. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we've got one more information item, and it's the June 2025 Service and Workforce Update, and we have Adam Harrington. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Happy to bring to you our changes that we're implementing on June 14th in just over 30 days, and a little summary of our workforce updates that really enable us to make these changes possible. This is our bus operator scaling up our hiring plan. The red line on here represents how many operators we actually schedule, and the green line is how many we're projecting to hire. Because it's a projection, we're not in a position to hire before we know we have people in place, but it also gives us some confidence to know that we're gonna have plenty of operators to help us support additional service improvements as we move forward through August and December. So from an operations standpoint, we're looking really good, and we're making progress in other areas of workforce at Metro Transit to help support our service. But for the June 14th pick, we're almost at 100% of where we were in 2019 as far as BRT and local bus service hours. This pick, we are actually adding a couple of commuter express trips, so that number ticks up a little bit, but we're chipping away at this column with BRT and local and continue to make really great progress there. So what this means for Network Now is that we'll be about 23% of all the Network Now improvements that we had planned. So out of 100%, we're 23% of the way there with the June pick. It's 25 routes that will have changes on them. And this map represents those 25 routes. And you'll note down here, there's a pretty good distribution of where those routes are located. And the red bullets and the red lines represent those routes that are being replaced by either B-line, which I'll talk a little bit about, or they're consolidated two routes together. Route 612 and 23 are being consolidated in one route 38. But it's a good news story here. We continue to make improvement on Network Now. And so the name of this game here is frequency. 10-minute frequency improved on weekends has been a really big improvement. We've got some weekday improvements expanding our 10-minute frequency. We also have quite a bit of 15-minute frequency improving. Route 54, most notably on Sundays, we actually, this is new for Route 54 because we had 20-minute frequency there before. A-line, Route 2, Route 10. And then better bus routes, we're actually improving the alignment of this route to be a little bit more streamlined, both through downtown Minneapolis and South Minneapolis. A few key commuter express improvements. Route 94 between Minneapolis and St. Paul is going to be operating on the weekends and on the evenings every half hour. So that's a really big improvement. We're looking forward to seeing how that can make a positive difference in the community. And then these other routes will be operating 2 trips in the morning and 2 trips in the afternoon. And I'll just point out that this Route 860 is the diagonal route that goes from Anoka down to Mounds View on Highway 10 and then direct into downtown St. Paul. So reestablishing that commuter service there. And of course, B-line. We've got a lot of great things happening with B-line opening the same day. It will be operating at 4 a.m. to 1 a.m. all days, about every 10 to 15 minutes through most of those service days. And it is 20% faster than the Route 21 when you're going between downtown Minneapolis and downtown St. Paul. And the big part of that is because Beeline does not serve the Midway Shopping Center, but we have instead added in a new route, Route 72, that will go directly to Midway Shopping Center, connect down to Selby, and continue on to what was the former Route 70 east of St. Paul. So a little route consolidation there that's happening. I mentioned the Route 38 earlier that will serve Lake Street between Lyndale and Uptown and Points West, and the Route 27, which will be the connection between Minnehaha and Lake Street, serving 26th and 28th north of Lake Street, and then back down on over to Uptown. And that's really also going to help us serve the South High School area. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a number of frequency improvements, including on A-Line. You'll see more about the Beeline marketing at the Committee of the Whole in June, but just some highlights here. We've got brochures that customers will have, and bus operators, digital and print advertising, 3 languages that we're producing that material in. The website's going to go live later this month. We've got station ambassadors and customer ambassadors out on the street, training for operators, and a lot of really great material. This image on the right shows you just a sample of what that will be. So Transit Online Trip Planner is already available today. By this weekend, we'll have our website up to date with the schedule information for those June service improvements. Bus stops and stations will be posted by June 2nd. And then, as I mentioned, there'll be an overall Beeline readiness presentation to Committee of the Whole on June 4th, all leading up to celebrations on June 14th and following with our additional assistance to customers following that. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Adam. Questions or comments? Councilmember Carter?
No, I was just, the date took me off guard, and I was thinking, oh, I'm out of town, but that's tomorrow. It's May. Okay. I would not want to be out of town for this. Thank you so much for the advanced preparation. I'm sorry, I did not have a question.
Any other questions, comments?
Madam Chair.
Councilmember Johnson?
Just working with our community relations people, and because there's so much awesomeness happening in transportation all the time, is this already set out as a calendar invite? So with the details? Okay, thank you, Elias. Appreciate that. The sooner the better, just because we're all booking probably our calendars into late summer and fall right now. So thank you for that.
Yes, we already received the save the date a few days ago, so yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
All right.
Well, we're excited.
Very excited. I know. This is I know it's a big one. So, and it's nice to see the already kind of quick implementation of network now activities. So well done.
Madam Chair, could I just?
Yep, Councilmember Vento?
I wish I had said this during the employee recognition. I was thinking about it then and didn't, but I'm so glad that we do employee recognition. It's wonderful, but there are a group of employees who aren't getting recognized very much, and that's those of you who are managers and bosses. And this is hard work, and you know, there's just an endless list of things to do, and I just want to say that good things happen in well-led organizations, and good things are happening in this organization. So kudos to all of you who are helping lead them. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Are you going to make him blush? No.
For as much misery as I've brought him, that's okay.
All right, any other questions, comments? All right, thanks, Adam. Thank you. All right, and that concludes our business. If there's nothing else, we are adjourned.